The CASA, who had been visiting with this child and with the mom every month for the life of the case, said, "This mom is really trying. I think we need to give her longer." It was so exciting the day we got the save the date for her wedding. Like, she looks like a totally different person. She called her CASA volunteer to say, "I want to show you my new apartment." She really had turned things around and said, had I lost my kids at that point, I wouldn't have had a reason to get clean. And that the CASA believing in me really helped cement the fact that I had to do this for my boys. Back in the late 70s, there was a judge who said, "There's somebody in my courtroom speaking for everybody, but nobody's speaking for the child. The real intention is that we are getting the child's perspective into court." So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. We train volunteers to advocate for abused and neglected children who are part of the court system. So when there's an open case here in our county, every child gets a CASA volunteer who is their voice in court.
So once someone becomes a CASA and they have a case, step one is to meet and get to know the child and all the people in the child's life. Step two is to meet with the child monthly. And step three is to write a report and go to court with a CASA staff.
So 40% of my volunteers work full-time. It is possible to do this and work full-time.
Wow.
You have to have a job that's a little flexible that will allow you to go to court occasionally, but that's usually only a few times a year, and in pretty far in advance, so people can take leave.
We will put a link in the description for the mentoring partnership to complete and then signal if you're interested in CASA.
We really do encourage that initial call us, let's set a time to sit down and chat, so that you can learn a little bit more about the specifics of what we do and whether this is something that you want to do. Or
there was a couple times in the conversation where I started to tear up, and I am right now. Man, do these kids need that level of presence and listening and voice, and it's so powerful. It's such a gift to be able to be a part of this. And listener, you are a part of this if you just take one small step to help advance it. So play that connector role, listener. Be that voice just by sharing this conversation and bring energy. It's not to us, it's not to Nikki. It is to these children who desperately need an advocate. Who was the mentor in your life who made all the difference? Or maybe you didn't have one. Who did you need back then? Welcome to the Mentoring Partnership of Miami County podcast, where we shine a light on those walking alongside kids with harder stories here in our community. If you want to show up for a kid from a hard place, complete the no commitment form in the description and we'll guide you down the path that best fits you. Now join us as we explore the transformative power of showing up and how becoming the person you needed can change a child's life, and maybe even your own. Hey listener, we are here today with our friend Nikki Sherck. She is the director of Miami County CASA, and our purpose today is to help you very clearly understand what CASA is, what a CASA volunteer does. I've heard it way back in high school. Someone said, "Yeah, I'm a CASA," and I never knew what that meant. And even working in foster care, I didn't sometimes know what it meant until I experienced it and felt it. And that can be a problem when these children need CASAs in their lives. And so we want to unpack that, and Nikki's going to help us with that today. So Nikki, how long have you been the director of CASA?
almost 8 years.
Oh, that's amazing. Tell us in the most distilled way, what is CASA? What do CASA volunteers do?
So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. We train volunteers to advocate for abused and neglected children who are part of the court system. So when there's an open case here in our county, every child gets a CASA volunteer who is their voice in court. We get to know the child, their situation. We talk to caregivers, teachers, doctors, anybody that's in that child's life in order to make good recommendations about what they need. And we recommend everything from where they should live, who they should live with, who they should be visiting, what kind of services they need, what kind of services maybe their family needs in order to be reunified.
So a CASA in many ways is a person in the middle that ends up connecting with so many of all the different people that are interacting with a child to help have a complete kind of view of what the child is experiencing.
Yes. Back in the late 70s, there was a judge who said, there's somebody in my courtroom speaking for everybody, but nobody's speaking for the child. The real intention is
Mm.
that we are getting the child's perspective into court. Children's Services is working with the whole family, and our only role is to make sure that the best interest of the child is being represented before a judge, because a judge or a magistrate has no idea what's happening out in the community and with this family. So we are that voice that communicates that to the court. And we work really closely with CPS, but sometimes our opinion differs because our goal is what's in the best interest of the child rather than looking at the whole.
Mm. Hmm. So
Usually it does mean looking at the whole family, and that is what's best for the child because we know that being in their bio family is always better. But um, our sole goal is representing what's the best interest of the child.
mhm. So a child between 0 and 18 are somehow engaged with courts through child protective services and other avenues and needs someone to be their voice so that a judge who's making a decision can get the most unbiased, um, thoughtful opinion of what would be best for a child. And a child can then affirm, invalidate, and um, have that voice alongside of them when their motivation is just for the child, where all these maybe other entities have their own motivations for what would be best.
Right. CPS is there, Child Protective Services. They have an attorney. The parents are there. They each have an attorney. So everybody is trying to make sure that their best interest is being represented. And it's our job to represent the child's best interest.
Mhm.
So all of the children that we are involved with first have had involvement with Children's Services. Some of them are still living with their families. Some of them are living with a kinship provider, maybe an aunt or uncle or a grandparent, and some of them are in foster care. It doesn't matter to us what the situation is. Once the court gets involved,
Mm.
then that's the trigger that gets us involved. And so here in Miami County, every child that has an open case has a CASA volunteer. It's not always possible in every other county because they're larger and have a larger caseload. But here in Miami County, every child gets a CASA volunteer.
Wow. Wow. And so for the last 8 years, you have experienced all of these volunteers caring for kids in this kind of way. I've heard so many stories. Maybe help paint a picture through one story that helps us um, see from maybe point A to point Z how a CASA might feel very fulfilled and filled with excitement to fulfill this role.
We do have a case that we're able to share. Part of our issue is it's hard to share our stories
Yeah.
because it's so confidential.
Right.
But we do have permission to share this information. We had a young mom who had gotten involved with CPS because of drug abuse. She had a substance abuse disorder, and she had two young kids. One was autistic. And the solution was that they were living with grandma on a safety plan in the short term while mom tried to, you know, recover from her substance abuse disorder. And as we all know in that field, there's a lot of relapse that happens. So they're often randomly drug tests. She was drug tested repeatedly and it kept coming back positive. And it got to a point where CPS was arguing to the court that maybe mom should just be taken off of the case plan and we should give custody to grandma.
Mm.
But the CASA, who had been visiting with this child and with the mom every month for the life of the case, said, this mom is really trying. We all know that relapse is part of the recovery process. I think we need to give her longer. I think we need to give her another chance. And because she knew the other things that she was doing, um, mom was living with grandma, so she was still interacting with the children. But the young boy who had autism really was well bonded to his mom. And so to suggest that she be taken off the case plan and have to move out really wasn't in his best interest because he needed that bond with his mom. Grandma was making sure that the kids were safe, even though mom kept using. But it was so exciting the day we got the save the date for her wedding. Like, she looks like a totally different person. She called her CASA volunteer to say, I want to show you my new apartment. She was able to get an apartment in the same building as grandma so that they could both continue to play an important role in both of these boys' lives. She was coaching the older boys' soccer team. She really had turned things around and said, had I lost my kids at that point, I wouldn't have had a reason to get clean. And that the CASA believing in me really helped cement the fact that I had to do this for my boys. And so they don't always turn out that way, but this is one
Mhm.
of those examples where the CASA's voice really made a difference in arguing what was needed and what was in the best interest of the children, but also helped then reunify a family.
Mhm. So that CASA spent time connecting with grandma, connecting with the child, connecting with mom, connecting with maybe you could share some of the other people that she did that CASA volunteer connected with. And she had this sense, and being an advocate means that you gather what you perceive to be the truth, the facts, and your opinions, and suggest this would might be in the best interest of the child. So maybe
Right.
like tease out like even that internal process of gathering and sharing that Akasa gets to experience.
Let me start with how when a case opens, what it looks like. So there are
Yeah.
rules here in Ohio. They're called the rules of superintendents, and Rule 48 from the Ohio Supreme Court says this is what a guardian ad litem in the state of Ohio must do.
Mm,
Our CASA volunteers are all considered guardian ad litem. It's
mhm.
confusing for people because most people
Yeah.
think of guardian ad litems as attorneys, but we are guardian ad litems and we have met all of the requirements in the state. But has a whole list of things we have to do. You have to talk to each parent. You have to talk to any caregivers, foster parents, somebody they might be living with, grandparents in this particular case. You have to talk to doctors, therapists, anybody, school teachers, anybody involved in that child's life. It says you need to talk to the child where no one else is present. We want to make sure they're not being coached by somebody to say a particular thing. So we have to be able to talk to them independently of any of those people present. So we
Mm,
do all of that. The beginning of the case is a little busier than the rest of the case for us because you have to do all that initial investigation. Write a little summary of each interview we do. um, Here at the CASA office, we have a template that all of our volunteers use, and you do it in Google Docs, and they type up a report. So our first communication with the court is this written document that summarizes each of those interviews that we've done. And then there's a section where we get to offer our opinion. We kind of summarize the whole case and offer what we think about the situation. And then we also offer recommendations. We always start with who should have custody of this child? Where should this child live? Who is it important for them to be visiting? And, hopefully we've noted if it's a school age child, are they on track developmentally? Do they need, some kind of educational assessment? Do they need some kind of mental health assessment? But the same with parents and other people in the child's world. Are there things they need? We are not experts and we don't claim to be. So we're not going to say this mom has a mental health issue. We're going to say we're going to recommend that mom needs a mental health assessment and then follow the, you know, suggestions of the mental health provider
mm,
because we don't have that kind of knowledge to be able to make diagnoses and suggestions on how to treat certain things. But we are recommending that they need an assessment and figure out if that's part of what's causing an issue in their family. So you do all that initial investigation and write that report and submit it to court. And we have about 60 days from the time we get the case until that report is due. 6 weeks, maybe. But, and then after that, we continue to visit the child every month for the life of the case. So as long as that case is open, we have to visit with the child every month. And that's a requirement of National CASA, which is our national organization. And we don't have to see the parents every month. So perhaps if a child is in foster care, When I had a case, I would visit the child in the foster home one month, and then I would visit when they were visiting with mom in the opposite months, so that you get to see how the kids interact with all of the different caregivers. But we keep in touch with teachers where we talk to mom's therapist if she's in therapy. She has to give us permission for that. She has to release that information. But we're checking up on how are those drug tests going. We talk to children's services a lot and really communicate well with them because they're collecting information each month as well. And so we continue to use all of that information. And every time we go back to court, we write a new report. So our volunteers have to turn in a report 2 weeks before every court hearing. My staff then helps edit that as necessary, can look at Rule 48 and say, have we met all of the requirements of Rule 48? If we've missed something, it gives us a little bit of time to be able to add something. Oh, we didn't talk to the teacher, but this is a school-age child. We really need to add that. So that gives us time to talk to them. But then the court requires, and Rule 48 requires, that the report is turned to the court 7 days in advance of every hearing. So we have that week then to edit and make corrections. So it's a well-supported position. You're not out there on your own doing that. Our staff, each volunteer has a staff member who is their supervisor that really is meant to be a support person when you have a question, when there's an issue, to help review your report, all of those things. We go to court with every volunteer. So then we get to the day of the hearing, and a staff member will go with the volunteer to the hearing. And we're there in the courtroom saying these same things that are in our written report to the people in the courtroom, which include children's services and the parents and the magistrate. The one thing that's a little bit freeing and we hope helps alleviate some stress for our volunteer, because it is a big job. We understand that this is not the typical volunteer
Mm,
position. This is a
mm,
professional role where we're making big recommendations about a
mm.
child's life. But we're just going in with our recommendations. It's up to the judge to make the decisions, or the
Wow.
magistrate. And
Yeah.
so we can go in saying, we've collected the information that we needed to, and here's our opinion. And everybody else is going to provide their opinion as well. And then it's up to the magistrate in the end to decide what actually happens. And they obviously have to apply the law, what they can do or can't do as far as the law goes.
Mm,
So that's a little bit freeing. Yes, we're making tough decisions, but um, it isn't up to us in the end. We just have to present the information that we've collected on what's in the best interest of the child. One of the other things that's required is that we have to also say what the child's wishes are. That's a
mhm,
requirement of Rule 48 and just CASAs in general across the country, that even if we disagree, if the child, came from an
mm,
abusive situation and is saying, I want to go back home into that abusive situation, we have to put that in our report. The child's wishes are to return home. We can also put in our section that says that's just not safe for them at this point. Um, that we can't, that we would not recommend that. So our recommendation doesn't always have to be the same as what the child's wishes, but the court has to know what the child wants. It's a little tricky to ask a kid, like, where do you want to live? If
yeah.
you could live anywhere you wanted, who would you want to live with? We have some tricks to try and get to that question. But we have to ask that with every child. Obviously, we serve some children that are nonverbal. We get babies, so we can't always ask the question. They can't always respond, but we
Mm,
can then make observations. That child, that infant is reaching for the caregiver, is obviously content, whereas when someone else picks them up, they scream. We can observe those kinds of things and be able to put those in our report, and we just have to say this child's not old enough to express their wishes, but these are the things that we observe. So all of that goes into the report and what then the magistrate sees in order to make their decisions.
mhm, mhm. Okay. So to I'm gonna break it down, and then you tell me at the highest level what I'm missing. So once someone becomes a CASA and they have a case, step one is to meet and get to know all the child and all the people in the child's life. Step two is to meet with the child monthly at minimum. And step three is to write a report and go to court with a CASA staff member until, and that happens until the case is done, terminated. Am I missing something?
Training is the important piece that you're missing. So before any of that happens, each CASA
Right.
has to participate in 30 hours of training. We
Right.
offer
Yep.
that at different times throughout the year. We usually do it one night a week for 7 weeks, and then you get sworn in by the court. Then we give you your first case.
Right.
You do that initial investigation, write your report for the first hearing. So there's a set of 3 hearings that happen when a case opens, and the 3rd hearing is usually about 60 days after it opens, and that's the one where our report is required. And so we'll do that report, and then after that is when we continue to visit with them every month for the life of the case. Right now, our average case length is about 20 months. There's a process with Children's Services that if children are removed, parents have a year to work case plan services, which is their roadmap for how to get their kids back and the things that they have to do or accomplish in that time period. So if at the end of the year they're making progress towards that, then we can actually do 2 6-month extensions. But by the end of the 2 years, kids just deserve permanence. They need to be in a safe, loving, permanent home as soon as possible to really honor their timeline. Childhood is way too fleeting as it is. And so that's why our average case length is about 2 years, because then by the time we get to that point, if parents haven't made an effort to make those changes, then we have to look at what the other solutions are. Is there a kinship provider who would take legal custody of that child? Are they in a foster home? Is adoption maybe an issue, if the parents' rights are terminated? So those are all things we looked at down the road, but we want parents to succeed. We know that the best place for kids is in their bio home, if it's safe.
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
hopefully over that period, parents are willing to make the changes needed to make sure that a child is safe and that their basic needs are being met.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think it's probably a rare occurrence when you ask anyone, like, "Hey, do you think you care about kids in child welfare or in foster care?" And rare is it gonna be like, "No, I don't care about those children." Like, these are some of the most vulnerable, um, ones that have likely identified abuse or neglect in their life. And the on-ramps to being a part of helping those children and those families has been become a foster parent. There's hasn't been a ton of opportunities to support foster parents, but this opportunity is to help the child that's in here in foster care in a totally different way that people might have not known was an option before. Have you found that your current volunteers and maybe when you're also recruiting volunteers, that they see that picture and go, "Yes, that's exactly the way that I have been wanting to give my time towards these children."
They do. We hear that a lot
Yeah.
that, oh, I couldn't be a foster parent. I can't, give that much time. We estimate that it's 5 to 10 hours a month if you're serving on one case. We fully admit that it's more in that first month when you're doing all the initial investigation. It'll take more than that and then to write your first report. But after that, it is 5 to 10 hours a month that you plan on your own schedule. So 40% of my volunteers work full time. It is
Wow.
possible to do this and work full time.
Wow.
You have to have a job that's a little flexible that will allow you to go to court occasionally, but that's usually only a few times a year and in pretty far in advance so people can take leave. I have, active school teachers who are CASAs, and we do find that that is an arena that's great for recruiting. If you've been involved in a school setting as a teacher or any staff member, you've been making a difference in the lives of children. So often when people retire, CASA is a great solution for them because it's a way for them to continue to make a difference in the lives of children even after they've retired. So, if I were looking at a retirement population, I love teachers. There's lots of other people, and you don't have to have other skills or specific skills. In fact, you only have to be 21 and be able to pass a background check. We would
Mm.
hope that you're also a little bit familiar with computers and feel okay about writing the report because that's the piece that not everyone loves. We understand that. We've tried to make it easier by having a template and making the process easier, but that is unfortunately a part of what we have to do. So If that isn't something comfortable, then it's probably not a great match. We're trying to find people that this really is a great match for their skills and what they're and how they can make a difference in the lives of a child.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the purpose of this conversation is for people to understand as best they can what if CASA might be a good fit for them, because we want more good quality CASAs in our county and beyond to advocate for children and to feel that connection to this child welfare system that so many people are on the way far away from or on the fringes of. So we will put a link in the description for the mentoring partnership to complete and then signal if you're interested in CASA. It can also reach out directly to you through your website. And then once they make that point of connection, what would, I heard that they have 30 hours of training. If someone's on the fence and they're like, I'm not sure, I need a little bit more context, what would be like one or two ways where it could help them discern if this is the right fit for them?
We would love to sit down and have a chat over coffee. Let's plan a time. I want to answer any questions that someone might have because we want it to be the right fit for them. And we understand that this is not a typical volunteer role. And so we want people to understand what they're signing up for. We then have an application that's on our website. So that's the next step. So you fill out an application. We bring you in for an interview where we talk about other things. But we really do encourage that initial call us. Let's set a time to sit down and chat so that you can learn a little bit more about the specifics of what we do and whether this is something that you want to do or not.
Hmm. Yeah. And just to like hammer the point home a little bit about the value of CASA, we have a good mutual friend who's a foster parent and um, said recently that she thinks that CASAs are some of the most kind of powerful, hidden, impactful people within this whole process for a child and their family. And maybe could you share why she might have said that?
Yes. I think it's because we're in these children's lives regularly and we stay involved. So people that have had experience with an attorney guardian ad litem, they all often show up right before a hearing and
Yeah.
don't spend a lot of time with the family or the child and are making recommendations based on that. We all know that children's services workers have a large caseload. They don't
Yeah.
always have as much time to spend by no fault of their own, just because there are
Right.
too many kids in the system. But we have a CASA volunteer who's dedicated to one case. The majority of our CASAs take either one or two cases at
Mm,
their choice. We have a couple that'll take more than that, but very seldom is that the case. So that you have dedicated time with that family, with that child, you really are in their world. So as a result, the court really trusts
mm,
that the information we've put down is correct, that we've interviewed these people and we're presenting the information. The magistrate will often say, I can't go out and interview these people in their homes. That's what CASA's for. They say that to the parents in the courtroom. So when they call you, call them back. And so they really encourage people to talk to us and people feel seen and heard. We're hearing the parents' side of the story as well. We have to go in a very non-judgmental way, even if we've read information that is less than ideal.
mm,
But we want to get to know them and know their story. So much of what happens in our community is generational. This might be the way someone was parented, and this is how they thought parenting worked. And so, how do we help break some of those cycles? So, because we want families to stay together whenever possible.
mhm,
But I think that, the court takes into account everybody's opinion in the courtroom, but they do know these are volunteers that have dedicated their time and effort to doing this and really take our opinion highly in many
mm,
cases.
hmm,
Sometimes we recommend things that, they can't award because legally they cannot award it. But we can also recommend the things that, are maybe a little off the wall. We had a particular child who had moved to a different location and was missing her cat. we put it in the recommendations. Can we see if this cat can be moved with her?
Mm.
And so, can we find things like that? Or does a child need a big brother, big sister, a mentor, whatever that is? We all know that resilience really the difference in resilience can be one caring adult in a child's life. And we want to remain consistent and be that one caring adult throughout the case. But maybe they need a coach. Maybe they need to be in an extracurricular activity. And those aren't the things that children's services are always recommending. We can recommend some of those things that are a little non traditional because there are just less rules for us. But those are the things that are in the best interest of a child. So that's our job, is to recommend those kinds of things.
Mm. Yeah, I just looked up the definition of the word advocate, and it says one that argues for a cause, a supporter or defender, one that pleads in another's behalf, an intercessor. Like the role of an advocate, a connective tissue, the voice of, um, like in that example, saw what maybe others didn't see or said what others didn't say yet to help that child feel calmer, safer, connected, grounded, able, capable to take, the next step in their life.
Right. All the kids that we're working with have been through trauma. I mean,
Yeah.
just the fact that CPS is involved is trauma in
Yeah.
their world. And how do we help lessen the effects of that on their life?
Yeah. So we've spent a lot of time zooming in. For some people, this might be a zoom out where they might be like, "What? What's going on in our county? I don't understand." They live their daily lives. They don't see it. They don't know all the things. They might hear about it, but give us a quick zoom out of maybe your past 8 years and just like how many volunteers have you had? Maybe some that have come and gone. How many cases? How many cases are there regularly in Miami County? Kind of like what's the state of the child welfare system in terms of children and family stuff so that they can see the picture and then be like, "Oh yeah, we definitely need these CASAs as a part of it."
Our caseload has varied greatly in my last 8 years.
Yeah.
And when I came, we were serving about 168 kids per year. And then we went up to over 250. In 2024, we served 192 children. So it has leveled out a little bit. And I think this year might even be a little bit lower. At this moment, we have 58 volunteers who are trained and ready to be volunteers. And that is a high number. We trained quite a few new volunteers. There are always some people who are coming and going. Some people might do this for a year or two. We do ask that when somebody signs up, they're making a commitment to a child and to a case. So unless there is some extenuating circumstance, we want them to stay on as long as that case is open, that it's a commitment to the child, not a commitment to CASA. But usually that's about 2 years. So some people only take a couple cases and say, "This is enough." We had 3 volunteers who retired last year that had all been with us over 20 years. 2 of them had
Wow.
been with us 26 years, so they
Wow.
had been serving since 1996
Wow.
and or 1998, sorry, which is amazing. So some people stick with it. I have multiple volunteers that have been with us more than 15 years now. But I would say the majority of our volunteers we have trained in the last 8 years since I have been here. And some people get in and do it and say, maybe this isn't the right match for me. And we honor that. It is a volunteer position and we want to support them however best possible. But so we are constantly recruiting. We often train between 8 and 15 new volunteers a year. We do it 3 different times a year. So usually in January, May, and then in the fall, October, September, October-ish. So there are different times that you can get involved, depend on when, some parents have kids soccer in the fall, and so that's not a good time to go to training. So they say, I'll wait and do the January training. We really try and work it around the volunteer schedule because they are just that, volunteers. And so we try and make that accessible, but want people who have a passion for making a difference in the lives of kids and are willing to do things that aren't always easy because, the reality is sometimes we're going into dirty homes. We're experiencing things that aren't ideal. And we want to help them process that as well so
Mm-hmm.
that we aren't also offering additional vicarious trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very
But
good.
that's a pretty typical. We're going to serve about 200 kids every year here in
Mm-hmm.
Miami County.
Mm-hmm. So yes, you could always use more volunteers,
We
more people
do.
that say,
We actually just in the last couple months, because there was not a lot of new cases over the summer, um, is the first time that we have had CASAs waiting on a case
"Wow,
since 2019.
mm,
So the numbers had been rising so greatly that every time somebody would be done with a case, we'd say, "Okay, here's another one. Will you take it?" And so we're able to give people a break between cases now if necessary because we've recruited more volunteers. But we want to have, volunteers ready, willing, and able. We have no control over how many cases we get. Our office is close to the courthouse and we walk over and get our mail out of the mailbox at the court. And that's how we know if we have a new case. And so
mm,
we need to have volunteers ready, willing, and able when those new cases come in so that every child does have a CASA volunteer.
mhm." Yeah, so, and such to if you're listening and you've listened up until now, you have the opportunity to become a CASA or be the voice for a child by sharing this with 1, 2, 10, 100 people in Miami, anywhere, so that through a connection that you might have, it might be the next connection or the next or next, someone might say, ah, that's what I've been looking for. And more of our kids can be served in this kind of way. So play that connector role, listener. Be that voice just by sharing this conversation and bring energy. Again, it's not to us, it's not to Nikki. It is to these children who desperately need an advocate. So it was amazing. I think I don't remember. There was a couple times in the conversation where I started to tear up, and I am right now. And I'm sure this has happened to you many times over the past 8 years. Is the man? Do these kids need that level of presence and listening and voice? And it's so powerful. It's such a gift to be able to be a part of this. And listener, you are a part of this if you just take one small step to help advance it.
We continue to do training with all of our volunteers. They have to do 12 hours of continuing ed each year, and we do a book study each year. And the book that we're doing this year is called Misplaced Childhood. And it is written by somebody who grew up in foster care, I
Mhm.
believe in Texas. She lives in Texas now, and went on to be a CASA because she didn't have somebody being her voice and how important it was and how much that affects resilience. We
No.
want kids even kids who've experienced trauma, to be successful adults who can, you know, function in our world. And that's the definition of resilience. How well can you overcome the adversity that has existed in your life? And so that's our focus in this book is how do we help instill resilience in these kids? And by having one caring adult in their world makes the difference
Mm,
and finding those people. And so she shares then also how important it is for CASAs to interview well and so that they are, communicating the correct information. So we continue to pour into our volunteers even after they've been sworn in, because that ongoing training is really an important part of our process as well.
Yeah, resilience is not like a, you know, pull them up by your bootstraps individual sport. No, this is a team sport. Resilience happens through relationships. I think in that trauma world, like all harm comes through relationships, all healing comes through relationships. Hurting people tend to hurt people, healing people help people heal. And whether it's a CASA and a youth mentor with one of these kids as a pair, being that present, consistent, caring adult, statistic shows is like the deviating factor that goes from like a success story to a versus a statistic. Um, Anything you wanted to reflect on?
I would just say that yes, we do this here in Miami County, but 60 of the 88 counties in Ohio have CASA programs. There are 1,000 CASA programs in the United States, so you don't have to just do it here. If
Yeah.
you are hearing this somewhere else, there's going to be a CASA program near you, and you can make a difference by being able to be that voice of the child in the court.
Mm. Nikki, is there anything that we missed? Any parting reflections, words, or invitations?
As Paul said, if you've listened this long, thank you for sticking with us. This is an important process. Kids in the child welfare system, in our communities, and in our country are important, and we need to be part of making a difference for them. We understand that not everyone is called to be a CASA volunteer, but there is some way that everyone can make a difference in the life of the child. And I hope that you find that way in your own community, because these children are worth it. And they, it's cliche, but they are our future, and we want that future to be bright. The other thing that people say about why they can't be a foster parent or maybe why they couldn't be a CASA is, oh, I could not, you know, I, I would lose my heart to these kids and I couldn't then, leave them when the case is done. And these kids need us to get attached. They need people in their world who are attached to them, whether that's in the foster parent role or as a CASA or even as a community mentor. Um, I can't imagine not doing that because kids deserve that. And if we can even be a small part of that process, it's really important. So even though, yes, it will be hard on your heart and we want you to get attached, it's worth the time and effort when it makes a difference in their life. Yeah, they need this. And well, most of the time when a CASA case ends, then our role is done and the CASA doesn't have communication with the child or the family. But some cases last a long time. Maybe the child has been in the permanent custody of the agency for a long time. I've had volunteers and staff members who've helped kids apply to college, and I want them to be at those college graduations when it happens, or high school graduation even, or if they get married. And so we allow that relationship to continue if the family, is also open to that. But for the most part, our role ends when a case closes.
That was perfect. Thank you, Nikki. Man. Again, thank you, listener, for being here. Thank you, Nikki, for your time, your dedication, your heart, your care, your mind in this work. And thank you for helping us see CASA well and hopefully get more CASAs in the role. And listener, please do the next small step. I think that it will give you a joy that you didn't expect. Thanks, Nikki.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Wow. Wasn't that conversation powerful? Chances are, while you were listening, someone else was coming to mind. You wanted them to listen in too. And on behalf of a child, send this episode their way. And if you care about these kids, take a moment right now to subscribe, rate, and review. Because when you do, the algorithm helps more people find these conversations, to find the voice of these kids. And each small step you take help more adults show up for a child with a harder story. If you want to explore how you can show up, fill out the no commitment form in the description of this episode. Because only together can we help more kids find the support they need. And only together can we help more adults step into the story they were made for.